Okay, so again with the slides, I'm gonna just try to hit um, the things that I think need explanation. You can always reach out to me if you need more explanation. So looking at some of this is a repeat of the previous video and the handout, but who needs to be trained? What are you training on? And who's responsible for training? So is a sales manager training? Do you have a training manager that's responsible? So a lot of times bigger companies, they will have, so I'm thinking about Federated Insurance. They send everyone to Minnesota for, I don't remember how long. I think it's 9 months. And a guy from Federated I worked with when I was in Illinois, he actually runs the whole training program. And so he's the training manager, kind of at like a VP level, and he determines all the training needs. But like, how is the training set up? Like if it's purely on the job, is it the manager and maybe a senior salesperson? You have to determine that. Who's responsible? So there can be different areas. And it also depends on topics. So let's imagine that you work at Paycom and you're going through training. Different parts of training may be done by different parts of the organization. So, for example, sales operations would be probably responsible for the product knowledge and like the ins and outs and technical details of what the software can do. Then product marketing or marketing may come in and talk about kind of promotions that are going on, sources of leads, materials available, etc. There could be some learning and development or HR function from just the standpoint of training you on maybe HR and payroll, maybe even HR needs of an organization. And then sales may be responsible for highly the sales process itself and prospecting, etc. So other things you have to think about, how are you going to structure? What type of training are you doing? On the job, more of a centralized program, one based, instructor based. So there's positives and negatives to each one. And you have to think through what makes sense for your particular organization and for what you're training on, the topic of training, and who you are training. This you saw already in a handout. Some obstacles that can be in the way of successful training is if top management, like upper level management, doesn't care about people being trained, that can be a big obstacle because training is not cheap. So if they're not going to give you the budget to train people, then that can be a huge hurdle. Also, if let's say experienced salespeople and sales managers don't see the value in it, they're like, I already know everything. I've been here 10 years. Another hurdle. Also, if you don't have a good communication plan as to making it very clear the benefits that the salesperson is going to receive from having this training, then you might get some pushback. Because think about being a salesperson. How do you make money? Primarily off commission. So if someone wants me to take, let's say I'm an experienced salesperson, someone wants me to take a week away from me meeting with my customers, probably I'm thinking, how much money am I losing in this week by not being out in the field doing my job? So you have to be really good in communicating the benefits and also considering that salespeople aren't going to want to take a lot of time away from their job. So maybe you structure training what you would fit into 1 week over 3 weeks and do it twice a week. So they aren't away so much. So, you can walk through for yourself this, basically process of analyzing the needs for the sales force. We've talked about the topics. There's a lot of apps out there that you can also use that are going to help. You can read through this. There are also some specialized training that you can do, etc. On-the-job training can take different formats. Here are 5 different formats. Read the definition. Read through this. Sorry, this is not a great video. So these slides that you can just read, I'm just gonna skip over. Okay, so you can't see on this video, but you can if you look at the slide. Just looking about when you are structuring your training, keeping in mind how people learn. Because you want to structure your training by not what's convenient for you, but how people actually learn and retain what they're being trained on. Okay, so some of these, like you see lecture and reading, are very low. In the beginning, some of those are a necessity. But the thing to keep in mind is you need to pair these things together. So I might have a lecture, but then what I want to accompany that with so that people really get the skills I'm training ingrained, like we do in the sales classes, is we teach you about something, then you do a role play on it, right? Because then you're practicing by doing. And then if you can turn around and coach a fellow student on, after you get through your intro class and you're in your advanced sales class, and you can help other students on what they're about to do in their intro class, that's going to help you ingrain even more the knowledge and abilities. So other things to keep in mind in terms of retention, I said you need to vary things. So I talked about on-the-job training. So a lot of companies in their training will mix on-the-job training with classroom training with maybe some web component or something to just kind of vary things. So these are some suggestions from this Gartner research. Think about the duration. How long is the training? If I sit and lecture you for 2 hours, I'm going to lose your attention. Having timed breaks, so knowing okay, I think I'll lecture for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, then we'll take a break. Using humor, any mnemonics, so those help you remember. You also need to involve testing. How do I know where you're at? So a lot of times what's recommended is you test before training starts and then throughout training so you can see progress or progression. And then using different videos and graphics, etc., to help things really just not be boring. So sales training benefits can sometimes be hard to measure. But I think if you start in the beginning when you're planning your training and think through what are measures of success going to be, like so-and-so increased their closing rate by X%, or they have this many more prospects, or they've moved this many more prospects from qualified prospects to an actual meeting. that you can quantify some of this. So you can read through this. And then with the sales training cost, I found this a little while ago. And I'm not going to go through all of these. So basically all the next slides are just different training options and the breakdown. But I like this. This is from HubSpot, but it evaluates these different training by these 5 different evaluation criteria. So the location, the length of training, the focus of training, the price. So they suggest, like, if you're paying however much money, let's say $1,000, the return on that investment should be at least 5 times that, so $5,000, and the audience. So one example, and then I'll end this video, is, so this one is the Sales MBA workshop, and a lot of these are linked, the vendor, but it's either of these locations. So you have to think about if it's only in these locations, although the price looks pretty good, $395 to $595 per person, you have to, unless you're in Boston or California, Menlo Park, I believe, is in the San Francisco area. Unless you happen to be there, you are flying your people there, you're probably paying a per diem, you're paying for their hotel, you're paying for anything else. So you have to incorporate that into the cost. So while the cost of the workshop is $395 to $595, that's not the total cost. And then this one's on site, and you can go through that. This one's online. And so there are just different examples throughout this that you can go through.